What makes me want to write? Well, writing is one of those mystical processes that I don't know if anybody can really explain. I've met a lot of people who feel a lot of different ways about writing. I've met people who really openly admit that they're really not very good writers. And I've met people who think they're not really good writers and they want to run with a million ideas and they just don't know where to start, who actually in the end aren't really that bad. And I've met people who think they're really good writers that aren't. And I've met really good writers that were really good writers. And I think that the commonality that a lot of people have in writing is that they don't know where it comes from, but somehow in it they find their voice, they find a purpose, they find an insight that maybe they don't get anywhere else. And that changes how they view the world, and it changes how the world views them, that there's almost a synergy in it. And so why do I write? Because it gives me a voice, because it gives me a perspective, because whether what comes out is good or bad, it needs to be said. And I have never found a better way to do it. But what makes me write, I don't know. It's a process that is beyond all of us and is beyond anything that we can really imagine. And if you're in that state and you write and it's good, or even if it's bad, and you're a part of that process, then you know that process. How do I write? I can't tell you how many times I've been asked that. I write from life, and like I had kind of said with the last question, I don't really understand it. I can't really explain it. It's not really something that I understand. But I don't really have a special way I have to write. I don't really like it with a lot of people talking to me when I'm trying to do it, but I can do it in front of the TV, I can do it with music, I can do it with background noise, I can do it in complete and total silence, which is my preference. But we know with life that doesn't always necessarily go the way that we want. But because I typically get ideas and I kind of pull the ideas from wherever, and those ideas typically do come from life. They might come from circumstances, they may come from things that are going on, they may come from experiences I'm having or things that are going on around me. However I kind of put it, I draw that inspiration from where it comes from and I go from there, and the process kind of takes off from there. And I've got tons of notes everywhere reminding me of stuff I want to write. And I will say that with the publishing of the books I've already done, a lot of those words have been completed and a lot of those notes are now gone because they're in the books. But it's just something that takes on its own life form and its own force, and from there I just put it together and the book comes forth. Everybody always wants advice when it comes to writing. Everybody always wants to know, well, what tips would I give to them to be a writer or this or that. But if you're a real writer, you kind of figure it out. Most often I'm asked about process because I find that true writers kind of find their writing process odd because they're in more than one place at one time and they're doing more than one thing at once. But overall with writing, I think that the biggest tip I would give to a writer is to write and to make it that priority in their lives, because so often we have big dreams or we have things that we want to aspire to and we don't do them because life gets in the way. Instead of letting life inspire our writing process, we let it distract us from it. And so whether it's because we have a job and we've got to pay our bills, or because we think it's too expensive to get published, or because we're afraid to even get started, we're afraid we're going to get in that process and we're afraid that we're not going to be able to write, too often we don't even get started or we don't even try. And my best advice to a writer would be to try, to somehow find a way to organize your ideas the best way that you can and put something together and go from there and make it your own, because every writer has their own individual style. They each have their own individual process. Make sure you have a good editor. Make sure that you have a good publisher that really believes in your work and is willing to take that time to make sure that what you write is presented in a way that makes sense, because editing really isn't about changing your ideas. It's about making sure that the presentation is consistent. And don't give up on it. Don't let life be the reason you don't write. Let writing be what gets you through life. And let it be cathartic. Let it be the thing that helps you to process what's going on within your experience.